Good morning, Morai v'Rabotai, Bruchim Habayim. We are continuing our Masechet Succah, and we are on the very top line of Gimel Amud Bet. Today's Amud is being learned as a zchut for Refuah Shelema of Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid, that should have a full recovery. Refuah Shelema Be'ezrat Hashem, Amen. Also dedicated, we dedicated as a group to this little girl in the community. They had a fire accident, severely burnt. She really needs Rachamei Shamayim. We all daven for the family and for her to have Refuah Shelema. Esther Bracha Bat Chaya, Be'ezrat Hashem, is going through a surgery again today. Should have Be'ezrat Hashem Refuah Shelema. Amen. Also, this week's learning of Amud Yomi has been sponsored by Dr. Ram Nasir in the memory of Avraham ben Yehuda. So the Neshama should have an aliyah, and for Refuah Shelema of Sharon ben Rivka, that should have full recovery. This month's learning has been also sponsored by the Rosen family for the safety of our Chayalim and the safe return of the remaining hostages, Be'ezrat Hashem, to the arms of their families, and also has been dedicated by the Farivar family in memory of Shlomo ben Yitzchak Chaim. So the Neshama should have an aliyah Be'ezrat Hashem. Amen. Last but not least, all the learnings of the community this month have been graciously dedicated by the Dayan family, by Cohen family, by Shea family. It should be an ultimate zchut for all the mishpachot Be'ezrat Hashem. Amen. Amen. Okay, so we started a fascinating discussion, which really we're going to discuss later on Daf Zayin, Machloket Rabbi Yehuda Nasir Rebbe, and Chachamim, what is the minimum size of a sukkah? Now the Tarakama, Chachamim, Bet Shammai, Bet Hillel, however we slice this together, they hold that a minimum sukkah is a very small sukkah. 7 tefachim by 7 tefachim. Now every tefach is, according to majority of poskim, Rab Chaim Naeh, it's known as the Shita of Agrach Naeh, it's 8 centimeters. According to the Chazon Ish, it's 10 centimeters. So it's not a whole large shiur. When you say 7 tefachim, you're talking about a small measurement. 7 tefachim by 7 tefachim, or maybe even 6 tefachim by 6 tefachim would be sufficient. Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi says that no, you need 4 amot by 4 amot. Now the Gemara pauses this discussion for a moment and says, wait a second. I could go through Shas in my mind and quickly bring up many different areas of halacha that we see this requirement of minimum 4 by 4 amot, approximately 6 feet by 6 feet. And the Gemara's question obviously is that indicative that we paskin like Rebbe in all of these sugyas? Is that indicative that we should also in Masechet Sukkah Daf Gimel paskin like Rebbe and say the minimum shiur of Sukkah is 4 amot? Which will be problematic, because remember, 2 seconds ago, right, in the middle of Gimel Amud Aleph, we said the halacha is like Beit Shammai, that the shiur of Sukkah minimum is 7 by 7 tefachim. So if I could find approximately 10 different places in Shas that would seem to indicate that the minimum shiur of any house, any structure is 4 by 4 amot, then we would have a problem, right? So let's go through these quickly again, and the Gemara is going to revisit few of them to redefine them, and then we'll drop the actual question of what do we do with Beit Shammai, right? So the Gemara says, let's just go back to the bottom of Gimel Amud Aleph to review these few items that we started with 4 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. The Gemara says, Man Tana lehai Tanu Rabbanan. So who is the Tana to this writer that we have learned that Bayit Shem bo arba amot arba amot? If you have a house, a room, a closet, and a space that is less than 4 amot by 4 amot, you don't need mezuzah. If you build a structure less than 4 amot on 4 amot, 6 by 6 feet, it's patur min ha'ma'akeh. Now, by the way, all these things, the pasuk says about them bayit, right? Ki tivne bayit chadash. When you build a new bayit, v'asita ma'akeh legagecha. You have to also build a fence on the rooftop of it, if it's used, because then we don't want people to fall and die, right? But it says kitivne bayit. If you build a bayit, so what if I build something that's less than 4 by 4 amot? It's not a bayit. Even if you use the rooftop, quote unquote, of that place, you don't have a chiyuv of makeh. You don't, right? So house mezuzah, you're patur. Makeh, you're patur. Also mezuzah, it says mezuzot betecha ubisharecha. It has to be on the doorposts of your house. So if it's less than 4 by 4, it's not a house, says the Braita, says the Gemara. Ve'eno metameh b'negaim. Again, it says in your bayit, kenega nir'eli ba bayit, says the pasuk. If it's less than 4 by 4, it's not a bayit. So if you have this structure of less than 4 by 4, and you have a sarat on your wall, hazaku baruch, see you later, or don't see you later. You're not, it's patur. You're not, you don't have a chiyuv. Ve'eno nechlat bebate arei choma. It also doesn't become nechlat. What's nechlat? Depending on what type of city you have in Eretz Yisrael. If you have bate arei choma, if you have a walled city, when you sell your portion of your nachala, that means your Shevet Yehuda, Shevet Binyamin, Shevet Ruben, whatever it is, and you have a portion, and you have somebody that is in dire need of money, so they need to sell. So they sell their house. What's the halacha? Well, the halacha is you have 1 year to go back and redeem the house that you sold. If you didn't redeem it, then it's not coming back to you in Yovel. Unlike other areas in Eretz Yisrael, that by Yovel things will go back, but the Arei Choma are different. But you have 1 year. Now, what's 1 year, by the way? It's machloket. Machloket in the Gemara, whether it's a solar year, right? That regardless of the lunar calendar or Jewish calendar, you get 365 exact days. I go after that, or do you go after the Jewish calendar, which would sometimes be shorter, sometimes be longer, right? So this would be 352, 354, whatever, and sometimes you'll have a Shana Me'uberet, and you get a full 13 months of the Jewish calendar, which would end up being way more than 365 in that specific year. So that being a machloket, but you get 1 year. Whatever 1 year is, you get 1 year to redeem it. If you didn't, tough luck. You'll never see that house ever again. You, your children, by Yovel, nothing, right? But in the same Batei Arei Choma, same city, if I have a field and I sell it, what happens? Can I redeem it also in 1 year? No, you can't. You have to wait 2 years at least to redeem it, right? And if I didn't redeem it, what happens? Nothing. After Yovel, it comes back to you, right? It's completely different halachot in a field in Batei Arei Choma or a house in Batei Arei Choma. So what the Gemara is saying here is pashut. It says if you built and sold the structure, right, that's less than 4 by 4 amot, it's not a house. So it is Arei Choma, but it's not a bayit. It's as if it's a field. So therefore, A, you don't get to redeem it until 2 years, and B, if you didn't redeem it, then it comes back to you by Yovel anyways. But that's important to know if it's house or not. Again, it says bate arechoma. It says in the pasuk bayit, and this is not a bayit if it's less than 4x4, right? Again, we're going through all these sugyas in Shas. Every time that it says bayit, it has to be 4x4, right? So says the Gemara, ve'en chosrin ala morcha milchama. It says the Kohen Mashuach Milchama would stand. This is a sugya towards the end of Masechet Succah, and they would announce, "Miu, who is a person that built a new house and has not yet gone to enjoy the house? Yachzor yashuv lebeto. He should go back to his house because we don't want him to die. And someone else is going to take over his house without him. It's someone that betrothed a wife, a rusin, but hasn't yet consummated the marriage. And third is a person that built a vineyard. But the Gemara says all of this is a cover-up. All of these three are cover-up for a person that is yareh v'racha levav, a person that's scared. The Gemara there goes to say, scared, you're scared from averot, so on and so forth. But we want the scaredy cats to go back. We don't want people who are fearful of milchama to be in milchama, because not just they're going to get killed themselves, but they're going to melt away the courage and the spirit of war of their brothers as well. So we just kicked them out in the very beginning, right? There's a lot of interesting things to speak about that. But be that as it may, when you build a house, so you want to be drafted, you don't want to be drafted to milchama, right? When you hear about the war, you go build some like little hut somewhere, right? So they come, they measure, they say, sorry, you didn't learn the halachot of Masechet Succah, Gimel Amud Aleph. Next time build a bigger one. This is not 4 amod. By 4 amod, it's not considered a house, you go into war, right? And then, by the way, this is Milchamed Reshut, right? Milchamed Mitzvah, the Gemara says, Afiru chatan mechedro kala mechupata. Even you pull out the chatan from in the middle of the wedding and you send them to war if you have the criteria of what's considered Milchamed Mitzvah. So, says the Gemara, Ve'en ma'arvim bo, ve'en mishtatfim bo, ve'en manichim bo eruv. 3 halachot in regards to eruv, right? Which we were almost out of time yesterday, so we quickly went through them. 2 of them in one category, another one in a different category. We have 2 elements of eruv. Even if you have something that, biblically speaking, is considered a bona fide reshut hayachid, which when you have a chatzer, imagine the house is the way it used to work. And in Jewish quarter, I remember as a little kid, my father used to go every month to give tzedakah to the aniyim in what was considered the ghetto of the Jews in Sirus Street in the downtown of Tehran. And it still was, the life was like that. It was a chatzer. The houses around the chatzer, some were 1 floor, some were 2 floors, and there was a balcony in the 2nd floor, but different rooms opened on the old side. And you had 7 to 15 families living in one chatzer in small rooms. So you have a chatzer, that's Reshut HaYachid. But midrabanan, if you want to be carrying from one to another, you need eruv chatzerot, which means all of them participate in a food which would be put in one of the houses in the chatzer. Simple, right? Then you have shitufei mevod. I still remember, again, same place. There was a dead-end cul-de-sac that was called the Street of 7 Shuls, because there were 7 shuls in this one small dead-end street in Mahaleh, in Sirus Street in downtown Tehran, in the ghetto of the Jews, which only one of them was left, which was not operational. This is like me, a little kid, as a 5, 6-year-old, 7-year-old maybe, going with my father. She lived in Bivel, to give tzedakah, because these are people who were aniyim that couldn't move out to the regular neighborhoods, and this would be, they had actually still a lechi and korah for the Jews, where people think they were not Shabbat Shabbat. They had the eruv things and the lechi on the thing and so on and so forth. So you have shtufei mevoot, which means if you want to come from one chatzer to another chatzer and carry between these courtyards, inside and through the dead end, the cul-de-sac, the mabui, the alleyway, you need to do another thing on top of Eruvei Chatzerot. You have to also do Shituvei Mevoot, which means now the different Chatzerot, each one participates in the bread or the food of Eruv, and they put it in one of the Chatzerot, right? Now, who has to participate giving to this? If I live in the Chatzer, then I have to give to the Eruv. If I don't give, they're all stuck, right? They're all stuck. There's a lot of halachot about this. When you have apartment buildings and so on and so forth, and then there's a goy there, or there's a non-from Jew, how do you deal with it, and so on? How do you deal with hotels when you go for Pesach hotels? Can you carry, can you not carry inside? Massive and very practical sugya. So, the Gemara is saying over here something very simple. If you have a house that's less than 4 amot back, it's not considered a house. Therefore, does it have to participate in the Eruv? Does he have to give something towards the Eruv? No. Do you need his reshut? No, you don't. It's as if it's not there, right? That's what he means when the Gemara says ve'en me'arvin bo. And me'arvin bo means it's not included in the obligation of Eruv. He doesn't have to give anything, and we don't need the reshut, right? Of this little tiny room. And also, let's imagine if you have a chatzer with only one room in the chatzer. Only one room opens to the chatzer, and that is this tiny room, less than 4 amot by 4 amot, right? Does this chatzer have to participate in shitufei mevoot, in the eruv that's made from different courtyards for the cul-de-sac, for the alley? No. Because the only house that opens to this chaser is this little dinky, little tiny room, which is less than 4. It's not considered a house. It's not considered a house. This chaser has no houses, therefore has no obligation of participation in shtufei mevoot, in the eruv that's made in the alley, right? So those are the two initial parts of this Gemara of who is chayav to participate and whose permission reshut do you need. The third one is a different story. Ve'en manichin bo eruv. You can't also put in it eruv. What does that mean? That means forget about who is obligated to participate. Can I put my eruv chatzerot inside here? Because the halakha of eruv chatzerot is you take from everyone and you put it in one of the, help me out, houses around the courtyard. Can I put it in this room? No. Because this is like literally a hole in the wall. It's considered like the wall. It's not there. Can I put the food of eruv inside the chaser? No. It has to be in one of the houses. And therefore, because this little, small, tiny room is not considered a quote-unquote bayit, you can't put it there. It's not that just stick the thing somewhere in the chaser. You can't. It has to be a requirement of a house. You put it in one of the houses. So therefore, you can't place the food of eruvei chatzerot in this house if it's less than 4 by 4 amot, right? So says the Gemara. We also mentioned that if you have 2 towns, right? You need every town has 2,000 amot around it as the area that belongs to it. And if you have 2 towns that their 2,000 amot around overlaps, then Chazak Baruch, you could walk from one to another. On Shabbat, your kids could go play. What if you don't? You don't. Then you can't. Right? But if you have a house, let's imagine the boundaries of 2,000 amot of the 2,000 are very, very close. Right? They're 100 feet away from each other. There's no problem. 100 amot away from each other, right? There's no problem. You could build a house in the middle, and that merges the 2 towns together. Hazaku Baruch, right? What's the limit? The limit is 70.2 right? 70 amot and 2/3 of an amah. So if they are, aside from the house that's in the middle, if each one is 70, that means that the distance is less than 140 and 41 and 1/3, then you're good to go. Amazing, right? It enables it. So that's considered eruv. You're mixing these two towns together. What's the shiur of the house you have to build in the middle? It has to be 4x4, right? If it's not as big as 4x4, ein osin oto ibur. It's not the pregnancy of the town. This is called ibur because you're making. It's like it's a town that's pregnant. Like the stomach is extended from the town. It's considered now the town is going until this area of the house, and the other town also is going, so therefore the two towns are connected. Now you could carry and go from one to another. So says the Gemara, and the brothers and partners don't divide this. Now the Gemara is going to ask, what does that mean exactly, right? If you have a house that's less than 4x4 amot, it's not kedeh chaluka, says the Gemara. We'll see in just a moment in the Gemara what does that exactly mean, because it's going to become questionable. So says the Gemara, Lema Rebihi. Now we've finished all these sugyas. The Gemara says all of these examples throughout Shas seem to say the minimum amount is 4x4. Does that mean that all of these is Rebbe? Because Rebbe says Sukkah minimum is 4x4, not 7x7, right? But Shammai seem to indicate that an area of 7 tefachim by 7 tefachim also is chashuv, is kasher for Sukkah, right? The Gemara says no, it's not true. Afilu tema Rabbanan. It could even be Chachamim, Bet Shammai, Bet Hillel, whoever you want to call that Shita of Tanakama, because Sukkah is very different. In other words, even Bet Shammai, who says a Sukkah minimum is kasher 7 by 7 tefachim, could agree that all of these other things for mezuzah patur if it's less than 4x4. You could agree with that because Sukkah is different. Sukkah is called a dirat arai. It's a temporary dwelling. Temporary dwelling has its own. It doesn't have to be a house, right? House is something that's considered a livable living space. But we don't need a livable living space for Sukkah because it's dirat arai. It's just a temporary dwelling, and therefore they are mekel that even by 7 by 7 it's considered a kosher Sukkah. Aval legabe bayit, but when it comes to actual house, when the pasuk says ki tivne bayit chadash or hamezuzot betecha or mi bar bayit chadash v'lo chanacho or all those other items that we mentioned, even Bet Shammai would agree that you need 4x4. Legabe bayit the dirat kevab, when you need a set living space, afilu Rabbanan modu, even Rabbanan will agree the itbeh dalet amot al dalet amot dair ba'inshi, that if you have 4x4 people could live in it, but if anything less than that, ve'ilo lo dairi be'inshi, if it's anything less than that, people don't live in it, and therefore it will be not considered a bayit, quote unquote. Fine. Now the Gemara goes to quantify and understand these comments. Once we mention them, let's make sure we understand what these things are. Says the Gemara, Amar Mor, Patur mina mezuzah mina ma'akeh. When we talk about a house that's less than 4x4 that is absolved from the obligation of putting a mezuzah on it or building a fence on top of the rooftop of it, and it doesn't become tameh with sarat, if you see a sarat on the walls of this small tiny house, and also if you sold it in a walled city, it does not become the buyer's forever if I don't redeem it. It comes back to me. And if I build such house, I don't go back from a war, an optional war I have to fight. My Tama, what's the reason of those? Says the Gemara, the bayit ketiv bekulhu. All of them, the pasuk says bayit. Who built the new house and didn't start it? Who, or mezuzot betecha, or ketiv bayit chadash v'aslach ma'akel legagecha. All of them it says bayit, as we explained. Ve'en me'arvin bo ve'en mishtatfim bo, and the fact that you can't make eruvin, the 3 halachot of Masechet Eruvin that we discuss over here. My tama, why is it? De lo chazi ledira, because it's not fit for living. It's not considered a living space. And when Chazal, even though that's not in the pasuk, when Chazal obligated us in the halachot of Eruvin, they only included living spaces, not little hole in the walls. Eruve chatzerot en manichin bo. So the Gemara now asks the obvious question. The Gemara says, you told me 3 halachot. 2 of them is whether or not this space is obligated to participate in giving food, right? And then the 3rd halacha was that you can't even put the food of Eruv Chatzerot inside this house, right? So Gemara says something very fascinating. Gemara says, yes, correct, you can't use it for Eruv Chatzerot, but how about Shetufei Mevo'ot? Can I put the food that the different courtyards have to give in order to participate in carrying in the alley in this cul-de-sac? Can I put that in this house? The Gemara says you should be able to. Shtufei mevo'ot manichin. My tama, why? Because this is a hole in the wall, right? It's a hole in the wall. So it's considered not a house. What is it called? Considered then? It's considered like a batel to the chaser. It's like the chaser itself. Can I put the food of shitufei mevo'ot in the chaser? Now we said you can't put the food of eruvei chatzerot. If you want to make an eruv in the courtyard, the eruv, the food actually has to be put. I mean, the eruv of town is actually boxes of matzah. Usually is put in one of the shuls, right? That's how it is. And so some shuls have, some cities have it fancy. It's like an acrylic box that you could access, and it says on it eruv, right? And so on and so forth. But you have to have a place to put it, right? So by eruvei chatzerot, you have to put it in one of the houses. So this is not a house, you can't put. But by shtufei mevo'ot, where do you have to put it? You have to put it in one of the chatzerot of this alley, this cul-de-sac, this mabui. Ditnan, as we learn in, this has to be the Tanya, it's a Braita, eruvei chatzerot bechatzer, shtufei mabui bemabui. Eruv chatzerot should be in chaser, should be put in chaser, and shtufei mevo'ot should be put in a mabui. The Gemara says, wait a second, that can't be. We ask a question on this right away. Eruvei chatzerot bechatzer? You could put the food of eruv chatzerot in the chaser itself? You can't. Ve'hatenan, we learned in the Mishnah, hanoten eruvo bebet shar achsadra umirpeset. If you put the eruv chatzerot, in other words, you have a courtyard with 10 families, and you gathered the food from everyone, and you put it in Bet Shar. What's Bet Shar, by the way? It's a little house, little room, not a house, little room that was an entrance to the Chaser, either in the outside or immediately in the inside, and the guard would stand there, right? We would pass through it. So that Bet Shar, if you put your eruv in the Bet Shar, or you put it on a balcony around the Chaser, but in the balcony itself, open, or in Achsadra, in the hallway through the Chaser, Eino Eruv, it's Pasul. You did all the job, you gathered the food from every house in the Pasul. So of course, if I can't put it in Bet Shar and in Mirpeset, and in the Achsadra, of course I can't put it in the open Chaser. So says the Gemara, therefore, Ela Ema, Eruvei chatzerot bebayit shebechaser. What the writer should say is, Eruvei chatzerot, you put it in a house that's in the chaser, and shitufei mevo'ot, the eruv of the street, of the cul-de-sac, you put in a house, in the chaser that's in the maboi. Ve'eruvei mevo'ot, shitufei mevo'ot, bechaser shebemaboi. You have to put it in the chaser, in one of the chasers, one of the courtyards that open to that alley. And this room, this small, less than 4 by 4 room, is considered in the chaser, right? So just like you could put the food of the shtufei mevo'ot in the chaser itself, you could put it in this small room as well. right? Because this small room is considered a hole in the wall. It's like literally considered in the chatzer itself, in the courtyard open, because it's not considered a house. But guess what? By shitufei mevo'ot, you could put it in the chatzer, and therefore you're good to go. So says the Gemara, let's just finish this elements that we started. The Gemara says, if you have burganin, you know what burganin is? Burganin is like a little hut that the sayadeh ofot would use. In other words, if you're in the business of catching birds, right? That used to be a business. So you need a hiding place. You set your traps, and you need, first of all, a shaded place, and also a hiding place that birds don't see you, not to come to the trap. It's a little tiny thing. And the halakha is, if you have burganin between two cities, it's considered a ibur. It's considered enough for the pregnancy, so to speak, of the town. It's considered a house, a living, a something between two cities that would actually make them mixed. So says the Gemara, this little house is worse than burganin? Is it worse than the bird catching hod? So says the Gemara, yes, it is worse. Says the Gemara, I'm just reading the words that we explained already. It's not even as good as burganin. Why? Because burganin chazu lemiltahu. This little bird catching hod is at least fit for what is meant to be for. It's meant to be for catching birds, for this the guy to go hide there and take shelter, and it does its job. But if this is a house that you built, less than a room that's less than 4 amot per 4, it's meant for living, and it's not a living space. It's not big enough. And this is not big enough for doing its job. And then the Gemara finally explains, and we'll end with this. And this that we mentioned, that the brothers and partners can't divide this asset, this property that's less than 4 by 4. The Gemara says, what's the problem? Tama delet bedalit. You're saying that because it's 4 by 4, they can't, because it's less than 4 by 4, they can't divide it, which would indicate what? That as long as it is 4 by 4 or more, it would be dividable, right? Mara says that's a problem. V'hatanan, we learned in a Mishnah, right? This is Masechet Baba Batra in the beginning, the first book. In Daf Yud Aleph, Mara says, "En cholkin et chaser ad sheyeh bo 4 amot lazeh ו4 amot lazeh." We don't divide the chaser between two partners, two brothers, until you have 4 amot by 4 amot for each one of them, which would be a subtotal of what area? 4 amot by 8 amot. We at least need 8 amot by 4 amot, right? To be divisible. So says the Gemara, Ela ema embo din chaluka. It means it doesn't have din chaluka kechaser. Now let me explain this to you. When you have partners, you have brothers or you have partners that they own a shared area of courtyard that many different rooms or houses open to it, there are specific halachot for how you divide the area. So let's give an example. For instance, you have a courtyard that has 4 houses open to it. One of them is a massive house, and 3 small houses, 3 small rooms, right? Or back houses. And you want to divide it between 2 brothers, right? The father died, then the brothers wanted, the 2 brothers only, they want to divide it. One of them is going to take the big house, the other one is going to take the 3 small houses. In price, they're the same. In square footage, they're the same. So there's no machloket there, they're all happy. This guy Reuben is happy, Shimon is happy. How do you divide the courtyard? The halacha is, each one gets 4 amot in front of the opening of their domain without even division of the chaser itself. Imagine the chaser is 10,000 square foot, is the courtyard. But each one, the guy that got the big house, let's imagine if his doorway is 8 feet wide, he gets 4 amot, 6 feet in front of the 8 feet of the opening. That's not part of the division of the chaser, right? That's his to begin with, before you divide the courtyard. But the other brother who took the 3 small back houses, right? And each one has a wide, 10-foot wide door. He also gets, for each one of those 3 houses, he gets 4 amot, 6 feet, the width of the entire doorway, and that's his, right? So if it's 10 foot wide, each one of the doors, he gets 30 feet, 10 times 4 amot, right? 10 amot by 4 amot, he gets massive, and that's his. And whatever remainder of the chaser you have, minus this areas in front of every door, is going to be divided equally between the two, right? That's what it means over here. That if you have a house that the room is less than 4 amot by 4 amot, and then he has a door in front of it, you get nothing in front of the door of that chaser, because that's not a house. That's what it means, says the Gemara. Not that it's not divisible by itself, but it doesn't have the halacha of a house that you will get as a shutaf, the amount of 4 amot in front of the petach of this house in front of it. Just read through it to finish today's Gemara. The Amar Rav Huna, we got to get to the bottom of the Amud. Chaser lefi ptacha mitchalechet. When you have a courtyard, it gets divided between the shutafim, between the brothers or partners, based on how many doors they own. Rav Chisda Amar noten lekol, but Rav Huna says it gets divided the entire chaser gets divided based on the doors. Rav Chisda says no, that's drastic. But noten lekol petach upetach arba amot, every door gets arba amot in front of it, and then the rest of the courtyard gets divided equally. Ve'ashar cholkin oto beshaveh, gets equally divided between the partners or the brothers, the hanimili bayit. And that, says the Gemara, is only when you have a bayit that has 4 amot by 4 amot minimum size. But if it's the leme havekai, because that stands there, that's a serious living space. But if it's smaller than that, the lemitzdarkai, which is if it's smaller, it's not going to stand. You're going to destroy it at some point. It's just a matter of time. Lo yavinan le chaser. We're not going to give him chaser. We're not 2 lines up from the bottom of the Amud. And Be'ezrat Hashem will continue this in the days to come.